All right, it's time once again. We've waited for 45 days after the end of Q4 2025, and now the 13F filings are out. If you're new around here, that basically means we get to see what all the big name investors have been up to recently, what they've been buying, what they've been selling. And this time around, it was a pretty crazy quarter. I always think these videos are just going to die out because, normally when the market's super hot, that usually means that there's not much news from the world's best value investors. But yeah, time and time again, I am proven wrong. So in this video, I'm going to go through the biggest news that's come out of the most recent quarter. And quick PSA, if you have pre-ordered my book, firstly, thank you. Really appreciate the support. But if you have not submitted your pre-order receipt to the Google form in the description, please make sure you do so, as without doing that, you can't go in the running to win all the sweet prizes that we're giving away, including the major prize, which is the lunch with myself, Hamish Hodder, and Phil Town before the 2026 Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meeting in Omaha in May. So please remember to do that. But with that said, let's get into the video. And starting with the first big news story of the 13Fs, that was that the super investors are buying Amazon. We saw Seth Klarman opening a big new position in Amazon, and we also saw Bill Ackman increase the size of his fund's position by 65%. In the case of Klarman, this new buy goes straight to the second largest position in his portfolio, so he is clearly acting decisively here, investing around $500 million. That bought him 2.1 million shares, and that position now occupies 9.28% of the Baupost portfolio. So this is a really significant move from Klarman. And in the case of Bill Ackman, he added 65% to his Amazon stake for the Pershing Square portfolio, building on the position he bought in Q2 of last year. For him, this position is also a significant one, 14.28% of the portfolio, slotting in at number 3 behind Brookfield and Uber. So we are talking about a big bet from both of these guys. But why? Well, the most obvious answer, at least to me, is that the new money strategy is now available to pre-order on Amazon, which I would expect it's going to lift Amazon's total revenue by, 25%. Okay, but being serious, so Amazon can essentially be thought of as two core economic engines: the retail business, which includes the North America and the international revenue segments, and then Amazon Web Services. Now, this is the interesting thing that might surprise you if you don't follow this business super closely. So in 2025, Amazon's retail businesses, so Amazon.com and Prime and advertising, etc., that brought in $426.3 billion worth of revenue in North America and $161.9 billion internationally, whereas AWS only brought in $128.7 billion. So much less than the retail side, right? But here's the thing, when you look at how much of that revenue they get to keep as operating profit, well, retail in North America kept $29.6 billion, retail internationally kept $4.7 billion, but Amazon Web Services kept $45.6 billion. So out of their $80 billion in operating profit, AWS now brings in 57%, despite being just 18% of their revenue. So AWS is the much higher margin business. And right now, they're really doubling down into, you guessed it, AI infrastructure. Amazon recently announced they expect $200 billion in capital expenditures in 2026 for this infrastructure build out. But this is actually exciting, Bill Ackman. Pershing Square noted in a recent investor presentation that despite an impressive 20% growth rate in 2025, at a $140 billion run rate revenue scale, AWS's ability to meet customer demand was limited by capacity constraints. We expect the company's planned doubling of data center capacity through 2027 to be rapidly absorbed by compute demand from scaling AI inference workloads. The hope is that these investments expand AWS's capacity and thus prepare them to support future demand for cloud computing services. And once the infrastructure is built, additional revenue can flow through at relatively high profitability. I mean, even since their Q3 earnings announcement, Amazon signed AWS deals with organizations like OpenAI, Visa, the NBA, BlackRock, Perplexity, Lyft, United Airlines, DoorDash, Salesforce, the US Air Force, Adobe, Thomson Reuters, AT&T, S&P Global, National Bank of Canada, London Stock Exchange Group, Choice Hotels, Accenture, Indeed, HSBC, CrowdStrike, and that's not even an exhaustive list. So growth is up. It seems like the demand is there. And without a significant dip in the stock price across Q4, it sounds as though Ackman and Klarman are just backing the narrative. Of course, that doesn't mean we should all go out there and follow suit. After all, look at Berkshire Hathaway. They actually sold 77% of their Amazon position this quarter, but it probably signals to us that maybe this is one that we should put on the watch list and do some deeper digging on. And speaking of Berkshire Hathaway, one of the big news stories out of this round's 13Fs is that this was the last 13F filing that we received from Berkshire Hathaway under Warren Buffett's leadership. He stood down from the CEO role at year end, and while he may still be involved in some investment decisions going forward, this portfolio will now very much be in the hands of Greg Abel and also Ted Weschler, who I imagine will take over a larger management role of the equity portfolio, especially considering Todd Combs departed to JP Morgan. So with that said, what did Warren Buffett do in the quarter? Were there any bombshells as he packed up his desk? Well, not really, if I'm honest. Berkshire Hathaway did reduce another 4% of their Apple stake, which is actually quite interesting because it is now down to almost the same portfolio percentage as their second largest investment in American Express, which is wild when you think that a couple of years ago, Apple was literally half of the Berkshire portfolio. Then beyond Apple, Buffett also reduced 9% in Bank of America, added 6.6% to Chevron, and added 9.3% to Chubb. There was one new buy, a $350 million position in the New York Times, actually. However, I think this is much more likely to be Ted than Buffett, and I say that simply due to size. But yeah, that's it. That rounds out Buffett's time at the helm of Berkshire Hathaway. An absolutely stellar career. These aren't even the most updated figures, but he finished out 2024 with an average annual return of 19.9% since 1965 versus just 10.4% annually for the S&P 500. In fact, by these stats, a $1 investment in Berkshire back in 1965 would give you over $55,000 today. And that's versus $391 invested in the S&P 500. It's very, very impressive. The undisputed king. Take a bow, Mr. Warren Buffett. Okay, with that said, moving on into the third big news story, we're actually going back to Bill Ackman for this one because he has just added Meta to his portfolio. Pershing Square added a new $1.76 billion position, and Meta now occupies slot number 5 in the portfolio at 11.37%. Now, unlike Amazon, Meta stock did experience a blip in Q4 of 25, and it was down as much as 25% from its highs just a few months earlier in August. So why would someone like Ackman buy into Meta stock? Well, I think there's really 3 parts to this one. There's the AI thesis, the moat, and the valuation. Now, I'm still not super sold on the gargantuan AI spending that's going on right now amongst these massive companies, but honestly, that's a moot point because Bill Ackman is certainly sold on it. In fact, in the investor presentation I quoted earlier, Pershing Square noted that Meta is firstly, quote, a leader in the fast-growing digital advertising space, but is also, quote, one of the clearest beneficiaries of AI integration. So they're happy to see Meta's significant investment in AI, as in their view, it has the potential to drastically improve their product through better content recommendations, and also improve their profitability through better ad targeting. In fact, in the recent investor presentation, Pershing Square noted that, quote, we believe concerns around Meta's AI-related spending initiatives are underestimating the company's long-term upside potential from AI. And Meta is certainly spending a lot on AI, with their estimates for capital expenditures in 2026 coming in somewhere between $115 and $135 billion. And if Meta hit the top end of that range, that would represent a jump of roughly 87% from 2025. So they are spending big. But the other element of Ackman's thesis is that it doesn't necessarily come down to AI as a make or break for Meta's business over the next year or two. And this is because Meta has a very powerful network effect and has had it for a very long time. He noted that they are a leader in the digital ad space. And the reason for this is because they have really dominant, well-loved platforms in Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, and WhatsApp that everybody uses. So it's not a case like Nvidia where the future of the business hangs on the development of AI. In Meta's case, they have a wide moat business already that AI can just make even better. So that's the second element of the thesis. And then the third is valuation. Now, yes, the stock pulled back by 25%, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's cheap. But interestingly, despite the stock having risen 600% since its lows in late 2022, if you look at the PE ratio of Meta, it's currently at 22, which is not very high versus the other companies in the Mag 7. And this is exactly what Pershing Square noted in that investor presentation too, saying, we believe these companies offer structurally higher growth than most companies in the S&P 500 at only modestly higher average multiples, going on later in the presentation to say that we believe Meta's current share price underappreciates the company's long-term upside potential from AI and represents a deeply discounted valuation for one of the world's greatest businesses. Again, not saying you should go out and buy it, but it's interesting to hear Bill Ackman and Pershing Square's thesis on this company. They are very bullish. But with that said, now moving on into the next news story, and this one, I have to admit, is a bit of a bummer. And that is that Michael Burry has indeed closed his fund. Swan Asset Management is no more. He did tell us about this last quarter, so I don't want to harp on about it for too long, but it's now official, I guess. No 13F for Michael Burry. However, I actually think this works out better for those who like to follow what he posts, because now that he's closed his fund, he's actually talking about what he's thinking a lot more. He's posting on Twitter regularly, and he's also posting on Substack. So for those wondering how to follow what he's thinking or what he's up to, they are the two ways you can do exactly that. But at least for now, no more 13F updates from Michael Burry going forward. And that brings us to the last news story out of the 13F filings from this time around. Honestly, I hate to end the video on a downer, but unfortunately this one really is. Now, I've known about this for a little while, but Guy Spier, a fantastic investor, author, and of course friend of the channel from the interview that we did a few years ago, unfortunately Guy has had to close down his fund for health reasons. So for those that haven't seen, I will read you an excerpt from his most recent annual letter. So this is all public information now, and it says, quote, "This is not the letter I wanted to be writing, but it's the one I have to write. As you know, we are returning outside capital and winding down Aquamarine Fund for external investors. This decision is not about performance or about the markets or timing. It's about my health and my obligation to treat your capital with the seriousness that it deserves." And he goes on to describe that unfortunately he has been battling grade 4 glioblastoma, which is an aggressive form of brain tumor, and he's had to undergo a series of surgeries for that lately, which has meant that obviously he hasn't really been able to focus on his investing. Very understandably. So yeah, this is a real tough one to stomach, especially having met Guy and the Aquamarine team. I can tell you they are the loveliest people going around. I really enjoy my time hanging out with those guys. So I want to say personally, Guy, my thoughts are with you and your family. And I know that Guy is an investor that a lot of you guys look up to as well. So with that in mind, what I thought I might do, if you guys want to, I thought that we as a community could maybe get together and send letters of prayers and appreciation and thanks to Guy. Totally optional, but if you would like to send a message to Guy, what I was thinking is that if you send something through to hello@newmoney.contact, I will collect everyone's messages and maybe print them out into a nice book or something similar, and I'll send that over to Guy from the entire New Money community. So I invite you to join me if you would like. Just put Guy Spier in the subject line, write your message. If you have a photo that you'd perhaps like to include, I can try and include that in the book as well. But yeah, honestly, a real bummer to finish off the video, unfortunately. But Guy, on behalf of myself and the whole New Money team, our thoughts are with you, my friend, and I hope you're doing okay. But yeah, sorry guys to end the video on such a downer, but I still appreciate you watching nonetheless. But with that said, they are the news stories of this round of 13F filings. I hope you still enjoyed the video, and with that said, I'll see you all in the next one.